Welcome to the Pro Design Builder podcast, the show where professionals and entrepreneurs share their stories, strategies, and secrets to building a thriving business and a successful life. I'm Sam, your host, as we dive deep into the world of life experiences and entrepreneurship. So, before we get started, just wanted to thank our sponsors. The Pro Design Builder is a coaching and consulting firm for real estate investors who want to build spec homes and multifamily projects. The Pro Design Builder, it's not just about building a business, it's about building a vision and a life by design. So, also, we're going to be hosting a house flipping boot camp March 26th and 27th in Tampa. And then we have dates in Fort Lauderdale as well, April 16th and April 17th. There'll be links in the bio for that. Also, I wanted to thank our other sponsor, the Nest Collab, which is an incubator for real estate investors. There are multiple experts in several different areas, whether it's building, whether it's short sales or creative finance. The Nest Collab would be your home for that. Lastly, as you know, foster care is a mission that's near and dear to my heart. I've had a number of kids through my home. I've adopted 2 kids I'm currently fostering now. The work in foster care is never over. If you ever feel led to give, there'll be a link in the description to feel free to give to our foster care initiative. Some of the things that it supports is we purchase beds for foster and adoptive parents. When there's a transition, there's always a need for something like that. Also, too, we support having an additional meal as the primary cook in the house. I understand how complex it is, and having an additional meal just takes a little bit of that burden off. Also, we support strong families, so we feel like the stronger the unit, and if the parents can get an additional date night on us, that's something that we would love to support. So, without further ado, just want to thank our guests. Our guest today is Ebony Walker, is a powerhouse entrepreneur, speaker, and publishing strategist and media communications coach, known as Ebony the Provoker, as CEO of Upright Media and founder of What's Next Strategy Consulting. She helps high level professionals refine their message, expand their influence, and monetize their experience. An 8-time Amazon International best-selling author, award-winning leader, she's been featured on ABC, Fox, CBS, NBC, and more. She's also an ordained pastor and an affirmed prophet. So thank you for blessing us with your presence today.
Thank you. It is such an honor to be a part of the family now. I'm just going to put myself as one of the family members. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's a community, it's a movement,
Yes, yes.
it's soul work, it's entrepreneurship, it's everything in a bag of chips.
All the things that are necessary.
It
Absolutely.
exactly. So to move the needle. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming on. So if you don't mind, just tell everybody just a little bit about yourself. Obviously, I did your introduction. So
Well, I am a North Carolina native. I'm a girl that loves Jesus. I love my husband. I love my family. And I never want anyone to come into my presence and leave the same way. I want them to be better because that's something I didn't get when I was younger. So that's who I am in a nutshell. I'm a girly girl. I'm a very protective mom. My son is about to make me a grandmother. Oh my goodness, that doesn't
okay.
even sound right saying that.
It happens. Yeah, time
Yeah,
flies.
but
Yeah.
entrepreneur, author. I'm just a woman who is trying to make sure that I die empty. That's it.
hmm I can see that you have 8 books. I think now nine.
Now
So
nine. Yeah.
you're definitely mashing on the gas, right? And
Yes.
and
Yes.
that's a shift that I've made too. Is operating 1,000% in purpose, not
Absolutely.
wasting any time in any aspect unless it's pursuing purpose driven work, and that's kind of where I'm at. So
That's right. That's
yeah,
the way
so
to go because we waste a lot
mhm.
of time doing other things. So it's
we
like, what am I supposed to be doing? We do all the good things, but we got to start doing the God things.
correct for sure. So let's dive in. Let's
Yes.
see who Ebony Walker is. So let's start with, what were you like as a child, and were there early signs of your path today?
Oh my goodness. As a child, so my parents were unfortunately both addicted to drugs. So if you can imagine growing up in that kind of environment, just all of the things that come along with it. So dealing with mental abuse, physical abuse, dealing with identity crisis, dealing with security issues, all of those things. And then I had a speech impediment on top of that. So I stuttered horribly. So I didn't like talking out loud to people. If they asked me a question, I wouldn't say anything. And then they would think I was dumb or, deaf or mute because I couldn't say the words. You could ask me how I'm doing, and I would look because in my head, okay, I got to figure out how to say it without
Yeah.
sounding ignorant. So I would just
Hmm.
stand there and stare at them. But then
Yeah.
I'm also a singer. So what I started doing was singing my responses. So they would ask, how am I doing? And I would just sing a song. This girl always walk around here singing, but they didn't know
Right.
that was a way of escape for me that helped me to communicate. And, even then you ask, did I see any signs of who I am today? It's amazing because number one, with me being a better communicator, I didn't know that that was what I was called to do. I didn't
Hmm.
know that God was going to use me in ministry. I was just a little girl who was trying to live. I was a little girl who didn't want to be abused physically, mentally,
Yeah.
or emotionally. But yet here I am pulling people out of the very things that I was in and had to fight my way out of as a child.
And I feel this the same way, for me. So, I'm lucky that, I had both of my parents.
Mhm.
Both of my parents were not on drugs, thank God for that.
Yes,
But
awesome.
as soon as I stepped outside that door, I
Oh.
was in, during the crack epidemic, there was five
Yeah.
crack houses on our street. So the activity level is probably very similar
Yeah.
to, what you experience. And it gives me a softer heart for the kids in foster care, because those kids were my friends, right? So I was considered a bad kid in dropout prevention.
Mhm.
And there was a number of reasons why I was there. And I didn't speak the language. I didn't have a great learning environment.
Mhm.
There was violence around me. It was all of these things that
Yeah.
kind of added to why I wasn't performing well.
Mhm.
And you said you had a speech impediment. I struggled to learn, I struggled to read, I struggled. And it makes perfect sense, because look at what your environment was.
Exactly.
So
And what could
now,
you do
no,
as a
this
child? What could you do? You're the one that's put in that situation. So
correct.
how do you pull yourself out of something that you weren't responsible for putting yourself into?
Correct. And I could remember, for the longest time, telling these kind of stories.
Mhm.
There was a sense of shame, but the reality is you
Yeah,
didn't deal the hand to yourself,
that's right.
right?
That's right.
And you're just you have to make what's best out of it. And but I also know too, without these stories, I wouldn't be reaching back and in foster care doing the
That's
work that I'm doing now. So people need to hear the stories,
right.
like this.
They do need it because I
Hmm.
wish that I would have had someone like you to come and pull me out because we went through the foster care system as well. Luckily we had some relatives that ended up adopting us. However, that situation still wasn't the greatest because
No.
at the time we were just a means of getting a check. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, I'll take you in to get the money, but you won't get any of it. So there was
Hmm.
another level of abuse that went there. And even with that, it's like, God, how can people be so cruel? You know?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it's unfortunate because these things happen. And when you've lived in it as you have, everybody doesn't have the best of intentions, unfortunately.
No, I completely agree with you. And what I equate the foster system to is Swiss cheese. There's holes, there's gaps,
Yeah.
there's missing pieces, there's brokenness, and there's a lot of people that fall through the gap.
Yeah.
And the reason why that happens even more is these are the voiceless, right? And when you look into the Bible and then talk about the orphans, the widows, and
Yes.
um, the
Those are
immigrants and stuff like
me.
that, those are
Yeah.
the people that have the least amount of voice, so they
Yeah.
don't get the avocation for them,
At all.
so my heart goes out to you for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But there is hope.
There,
We're
no,
proof
there,
of
of
that.
course, of
There
course.
is hope.
And it's, so who was the biggest influence on you growing up? I know you had a shaky, start. Did you have a big influence on your life?
You know what? I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. Wow. Um, I can't say that I didn't have any influences at all. My
Hmm.
grandmother, one of my grandmothers, she was definitely instrumental because she was, old school holiness church mother. She would take you to church even when you didn't want to go. I would say
Yep.
she was definitely instrumental because she always put me in an environment of prayer, even when I
Yep.
didn't want to go, when I didn't feel like it, not knowing that I would become that type of intercessor that she was plugging me into.
Plugging and hoping
So
and praying
she
over
was,
you for the
yes.
longest time.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, we've been here all day. How many times can you call on Jesus? But now I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. So she
Yes, exactly.
definitely
Hmm.
would be one to influence me. Even as an adult, as weird as this may sound, my son, who's an adult now, but
Hmm.
he definitely influenced me in my early 20s because that was okay, now I'm thrown into motherhood. So I didn't have
Yeah.
the greatest relationship or the greatest example as a child. So now
Correct.
here I am, and all I know to do is to do what I didn't get. So let me see how
Correct.
this goes. So
Correct.
he was a great influence to me because my son made me grow up. I got pregnant when I was 19, had my son when I was 20, and I had to grow up. But that gave me something to change for. And sometimes, people will say, well, you got to do it for you. But sometimes, if you don't really know who you are and if you don't even love who you are, then
Correct.
doing it for yourself is just not enough.
Correct. No,
So,
I completely agree with
yeah,
that. I
yeah.
I think so many times you're trying to, find your way, you're trying to
Mhm.
find your lane, and you
Yeah.
really don't know, you really don't know who
No idea.
who
It's like,
who, who you
okay,
are,
I'm here and they tell me I'm this, they tell me I'm that, but
uh-huh.
it's a lot of people who, get in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s and have no idea who they are or what their purpose is, and they're just going off of what someone has told them they could or could not be, should or should not be, should or should not do. And for a long time that's just what I was. I was the girl whose parents were on drugs. I was the girl whose father was abusive. I was the girl whose mom, had some major issues. And it was like, okay, so where do I fit in? I don't want to
Hmm.
be like that, but is that my only option? Because everyone could tell me what I didn't need to do, but no one was showing me what to do.
Hmm.
So all
So
I had was, okay, let me just not be this way.
So yeah, no, exactly. I think a lot of people fall into this boat where they're just kind of like, you know what, I seen it done this way because it's
Not that
exactly what I did. Because I've been taking notes for a very long time. I was like, I didn't like this,
yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and let me provide this,
Mhm.
for my kids and for my family. But
Absolutely.
I love that I get to rebuild, and for me, with especially for my kids, I get to kind of see a very innocent version of childhood
Yeah.
that I didn't experience.
Right.
So kind of like you mentioned, your son, and he kind
Yes.
of gave you purpose. For me, I'm like watching
Hmm.
a beautiful, childhood. I was like, man, maybe I could have been like Caden, you know, if I didn't have all these elements going on. Man, maybe I would
Like
have
it's
been like
turned
that,
like the hands of time. Yes.
Exactly.
But I think
So
our children do that for us, though.
they do.
We see them or we see what we didn't have. So then we watch them. We're inspired by them to an extent, and
Yeah,
they're just living. But the beautiful thing about it is that they're living in a place of security that we
they are.
provide that we weren't given.
Correct.
And, even to the same, my son, he'll be 23 this year and he's about to have his first child.
Hmm.
And even him preparing, he still calls me mommy. And, my
Yeah.
son is 6'5", big,
Oh
tall
wow.
guy, but I'm still mommy and my little 5'7" height.
Yeah,
But
yeah, exactly.
he respects me and he feels safe with me. And that's
Correct.
beautiful because throughout all that we went through, it's great to know that when I had no idea what I was doing, I still provided that space for him to where he believed he could confide in me. And then now that he's in preparation, it's like, oh, I'm going to be this to my daughter because my
Correct.
mom did this and I saw
Yeah.
this. I'm like,
And
wow, well,
and the
thank God
bar
that,
continues to
yes,
rise. Yeah, which is
time
beautiful.
after
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Yes, I love
exactly.
it.
Yeah. So would you say that what was there a defining moment or event in your childhood that you feel like shaped you?
um, Man, you know what? Honestly, I think in my childhood, somewhat, but more so when I was 17. That's still kind of childhood, is when I got
Correct.
accepted into college because
Uh-huh.
no one thought that would happen because that wasn't supposed to happen. And every college that I applied to, I got accepted into. And that was really a defining moment because it was like, wait a minute, so I really am more than what they told me I could be. Wait, so I really do have options because, oh, well, you stutter and your mom was on drugs and she was promiscuous and your dad,
Mhm.
he's on drugs, so you might as
Yeah.
well fall into that pattern, you might as well settle. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, there's nothing wrong necessarily with just staying home and getting a job locally, but I don't want
Mm.
that.
Yeah.
So when I started getting those acceptance letters coming in, it was like, wait a
Mhm.
minute. And then it wasn't based off of gift, it wasn't based off of scholarships because I could play a sport or sing a
Yeah.
song. It was like, no, your grades are good enough. Your SAT score was good enough. Your academic history is good enough. Now you have, hey, take your pick. And that was really like an aha moment. Like, wait a minute, I do have options. Why didn't anybody ever tell me this before? Why
Yeah.
did I have to figure this out on my own when I'm almost an adult? So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like there was a shift for you when because obviously you're going through a challenging time and you mentioned that you uh stepped into foster care for a little bit,
Mhm.
placed with a different family. There's a lot of moving parts going on. Were you always able to keep your grades up, or did you have a switch where things connected and then you started applying yourself?
So ironically, I was always what they call a nerd.
Oh, okay,
Getting good
okay,
grades in
all
school
right,
was never
good.
an
Thanks.
issue. But however, I found myself getting lazy and getting distracted and getting angry about what was going on. So I would just not work. And teachers, even when I was with one foster family, the teachers would be like, okay, Ebony, we know, this is not the norm for you. We know. And I would start acting out. It's almost, I guess,
Hmm.
funny now, but it's synonymous with Peter in the Bible when the little girl was like, hey, you were with Jesus, and he had to cuss to try to make her believe he wasn't a part of that. It was the same thing for me. It was like, okay, now I know you're intelligent. You're very well spoken. You're well mannered, rather. You're quiet, but this is not your norm. So I started acting like something I was not to try to prove a different point, and they could see right through it.
Correct.
And it was crazy. But once I got my focus back, I was like, you know what? Okay, let me just try it. Even then, I wasn't trying to do better in
Hmm.
school to even go to college. I was
Yeah.
just doing right because I was just told to do right. Of all the things that my parents taught me, of all the chaos they had me in, they
Yeah.
expected me to get good
They
grades. And
still
that
expected
was
you to get.
so bigger.
Yeah. 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 That's funny. I remember a story. I'm in the seventh grade, right?
Mhm.
And my grades were trash, right? Like I was mainly a F student. I was in dropout prevention, but I remember there was this one teacher in the seventh grade. This is when no, eighth grade. This is when the switch started to happen for me. He looked at me and he was like, why is he acting like that? He
Mhm.
could see that I was acting. I was acting
Mhm.
because I was in survival, right?
Oh, that's it.
And I was just trying to, fit whatever I needed to fit, just to not have to have
Mhm.
so much conflict in my life. So he
Yeah.
said, he said, why is he acting like that? He's
Mm.
like, I gotta go, I gotta go. He came and he and knocked on my door.
Ooh. Mm.
Hello, did I lose you?
Are we still there?
We're still here. We're
Okay,
still
there
here.
we go.
Okay.
Well,
All
it
right. So
got kind of frozen for about 7 seconds. That's
we
okay.
did. We did. So the teacher knocks on the door, and then I come in, and I look at her. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is
Like
not
he
good.
showed up.
because
Uh-oh.
because I am a different kid at home, because mom is there. Mom is like, she got an iron fist. She's not
Uh-oh.
playing around. So he proceeds to talk to my mom and saying, hey, I'm seeing Sam. He's acting like a certain type of way, but he's right now I'm looking at him, and he's he's
Sam
a
knew
different
better at home.
he's a different kid. He's a different kid. And then, that's kind of the light bulb went off. But he did inspire me to really get active and
Mhm.
start participating, because I wasn't dumb. He was like, this kid is like acting dumb,
Mm,
and he's
right.
acting a certain type of way, but
Mhm.
that's not who
At
he
all.
is.
Mhm.
And I credit him to kind of helping me transition from where I
Mhm.
was, because my
Mhm.
grades were awful, and then it became a lot better that
Mhm.
towards that end of the school year. So
Wow.
yep,
Wow.
yep, yep. So that's good. So you had all of these applications. You
Mm.
got into everywhere that you applied. Where
Mm.
where did you end up going?
So I ended up going to North Carolina State University, go
Okay.
Wolfpack, in
Okay.
Raleigh, North Carolina, and
Uh-huh.
received a degree in criminal justice. However, didn't do anything with it. Never did anything with
Hmm.
it because even that expectation was still set. Get good grades. It doesn't matter what we've got going on, you get good grades. You go to school. So I'm like, okay, I'm in school now. Oh, I can be more. I can get into all these schools. Now I'm in school. What do I do? And I remember my father telling me as a child, you would make a good lawyer. And I was like, oh, okay. So when you're a young girl who is seeking approval from a man that's supposed to show you the right way, it can confuse you about what love is. But in my mind, well, I know dad was abusive. I know he did things to me, but he
Hmm.
told me I could be a good lawyer. So I'm going to go to law school.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I
Yeah.
felt like that was what somebody told me. No one ever sat down and said, hey, let's see what you're good at.
Hmm.
Let's see where your passion is. Or even churches back then didn't talk about purpose. They didn't talk
It
about,
is.
becoming who God called and created you to be. It was just live right, love the Lord, serve the Lord, but they didn't tell you how your life should exemplify serving the Lord outside of Wednesday Bible study, Thursday prayer meeting, and Sunday morning church service. So
Sounds about right. Yeah, exactly.
so I didn't know that I had options and could do other things. So I went to college and I was excited. And then when I got done with college, I went and got another degree. I got an associate's degree and still did nothing with those because it wasn't my passion. I ended
Hmm.
up becoming a paralegal for a couple of years. So that's
Yep.
as close as I got into that law degree, into that law field. But it was a good paycheck, but I was miserable because it was not what I was supposed to be doing.
You were unfulfilled. And so I
Absolutely.
had a similar moment like you described. And I you said go Wolfpack. We we played them in football at Philip Rivers.
Really?
It
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
work out. It was a last minute interception
Oh
for a
my
touchdown, and we
god.
lost.
Wow.
That's kind of how that's kind of how that happened. But
Philip Rivers was that
the
guy. Yep.
yeah, guys still talk about that. No, but I remember for me, when I don't remember exactly what it was, but I, I didn't have a way to pay for college, so it was two
Mhm.
options. It was either I go into the military, which I didn't want to do, or
Right.
I got a football scholarship.
Mhm.
Right, so 4 years of working.
Mhm.
I got my football scholarship, got my
Mhm.
school paid for. I got
Mm.
there freshman year, but kind of like how you describe,
Mhm.
my parents were just pushing to me to go to college, right? That's just kind of like that was their vision, go
This
to college,
mhm.
right? But then I get there and I'm like,
Now
I
what?
made a mistake. I made it.
Yeah.
I said, I made it. I made it.
Now what?
You didn't make it nowhere. You did. You did for your family. You did for your situation. You did for a lot of things, right? And you got the scholarship. But
But
that just that just kind of gives you a frame of mind. If you have someone that's pushing you, or they've
Mhm.
gone a little bit further, they maybe I wouldn't have thought that I made it,
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I would have kept reaching for whatever
absolutely.
that next bar is.
Right,
So
because you got there, but there was still work to do, and it was we don't think about that. It's like I'm here
correct.
now. I did what they told me to do, so I'm just gonna, get another degree, get a this. It's like no, wait, there's more work involved. There, I
Hmm.
need to focus myself because college is much different than high school, but
Correct.
they don't give you all of that info.
Yeah. Understood, understood. So then you worked for a little bit, you became a
Mhm.
paralegal,
Mhm.
and then what? What happened? What happened after that?
So became a paralegal at this time. By this time, I was a single mom, and being a paralegal and a single mother, I was like, oh, this is good money. I'm going to stick it out because I'm going to take care of my baby. It was just me and him. So I'm going to stick this thing out. But then I began to get lazy. When I get bored, I become detached. So I'm like, you know what? I don't think this is for me. But nope, because I got to take care of Trey. I got to do
Mhm,
this. So we're going to stick it out. And then it became a series of events, just things that single moms go through if you don't have the help. Car would break down, the school would
mhm,
close because of weather, didn't have a babysitter, the child was sick. So I was always a hard worker. I didn't mind working at all. But as a single mother, there was only so much that I could do. So then there were times where I would ask, the associates, and that's something you don't do. The city that I was living in, this was the top law firm. I was the only girl of color in the entire law firm, and I was the youngest paralegal and the youngest employee there. And I had the nerve to ask them, hey, since we got all this space, can I bring my baby to work with me? He won't make noise. He won't, be. And they would look at me like, who does this girl think she
who yeah,
is?
exactly. What type of operation we're running over
Right.
here?
Like,
Yeah.
honey, this is not, and listen, I know y'all look at me, but I've shown that I'm professional. I've proven who I am to you. I don't have any other option. I'm only
Correct.
asking for help. And then I said,
Mhm,
if that's not allowed, then could you point me in the direction of some resources? Is there another daycare facility around here that you all know of and trust that I could try to get him into? So I was,
mhm.
asking the right questions. And the
Correct.
owner, he was an older gentleman, very stern, always looked like he was just mad. And one day he
Mhm,
looked at me and said, bring him in. He'll be fine. And I was like, what? You're letting me
mhm.
bring oh my goodness, Mr. So and so. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I said, listen, Trey, we go in here. You got all the snacks, you got all the toys. Don't you come out of this room. Don't you do this. Just going through the list. And what
Yes.
happened? Every 5 minutes, mommy, look, mom. I'm thinking,
Oh
oh
my
God, what?
goodness. Oh man.
He was only 4, so I
Yeah,
couldn't get
so
mad.
you couldn't get
I couldn't
mad.
get
Yeah,
mad.
you're rolling with the punches, and this is
Just,
a real story
yeah.
because you're dealing with real life here, right? And you're a single mom, right? So
Yes, so I had to make it work, but needless to say, it didn't work for too long. So,
correct.
but I still, him coming to work with me was only for about a week until I got some other things situated. But
Mhm,
then it became an issue. He had some health issues. So, okay, I got to be out for this surgery. I got to be out
correct.
for this. I got to do that. Well, do you have help? Well, can't you ask the father? Do you have parents? Can't you? And I'm like, sir, this is my family. So let me tell you the help that I have. And I ran down the list. And while I'm not expecting sympathy, I'm giving you the truth, but you're telling me you're making excuses. If you were a real mother, no, don't tell
Mm-mm.
me I'm not a real
Yeah.
mother. And that
Correct, 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 correct.
internally, I was like, you know what? I'm already trying my best. I'm not going to let you treat me like I'm not doing anything at all.
Correct, correct,
So
correct.
I just started putting in applications, going to other places, ended up getting a job that was paying not even a quarter of what I was making, but I had
Mhm.
to do what I had to
You
do.
had to do, yeah.
Substitute position. By this time, he was going into kindergarten. So now I'm a substitute teacher at his school, working another job. Now my child is a latchkey kid. I'm like, you go
Mhm.
home, you go fix your sandwich, you stay there. At 5 years old, my baby is, getting himself off the bus, going home by
Correct.
himself. But
Mhm.
I didn't have a
That you
choice.
didn't have a choice.
I did
So
what I
this actually touches on a really important point and important topic that I kind of started shedding some light on. We talk about, family
Mhm.
dynamics, right? So typically what happens is, especially when it comes to foster kids, is there's a disruption in the family,
Mhm.
right? Then there is the trauma, then
Mhm.
there is the mental health,
Yeah.
And then if there is a final nail on the coffin, it would be the drugs. And then that's kind of leads to homelessness.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, not having this family support is something that you're describing,
Hmm.
and the challenges of going through that and not having a great system behind you kind of
Hmm.
put you, in a lot of ways behind the eight ball. But I'm glad that worked through that.
Yeah.
And we know that it was not easy
At
to,
all.
no, at all. So then where did you land there? You landed in a place. Where did you land?
I landed in a place to where I needed to get me together for my son regardless. At this point in time, it was no longer about what I wanted to do, what I enjoyed doing,
Yeah.
honestly. It was make the sacrifice that your mother didn't make. And that's, not to throw shade. And I know some may hear that and say, oh, you shouldn't say that about your mom. But I didn't have that example. So I had to be the opposite to ensure. So if it was working 2 or 3 jobs, if it was sleeping in my car, if it was me not eating to make sure he ate, if it was sending him to the neighbors because she had eat and she had, water, she had food, and I'm sitting in a cold apartment eating Rice Krispies. I did all of that because I had to make sure my baby was good because I was never going to let him feel or experience anything like I experienced. And we got through it. And then by the
Correct.
time he was about 8 or 9, where by this time I'm really living for God. I'm in the ministry, active in ministry, but still, that woman that's desiring a husband, but still
Hmm.
just trying to be the best mother I could be. Long story short, my husband found me working. He found me in ministry. And then
Hmm.
it's that thing of, okay, now he's coming along. Okay, now he's in our lives, but is he going to accept my son? Because now I'm protective. I'm not going to let someone abuse my son.
Correct.
I'm not going to
Correct.
let
Correct.
so
Correct.
all of that. But needless to say, next month, matter of fact, in 2 weeks, it'll be 13 years that we've been married.
Okay.
Praise God. So
Congrats.
he has
Congrats.
been a great help. A great
Hmm.
help. He's been a great role model to my son. I mean,
Right.
he has been the man that my husband needed. A lot of single mothers will say, "Oh, well, I'm the mother and the father." That was never
Hmm.
my declaration because I am not a man. I will
Right.
never be a man. I cannot teach my son man stuff. I don't
Right.
care. So I thank God that through all of that, He allowed me to navigate growing up and being a woman, but being a mother, but also was grooming me to be a wife.
For
So
sure.
I landed in a place where, okay, and even then that's a whole other story, honey, for another show because
Yeah.
jumping into
Yeah.
pastoralship, marrying an
Yeah.
apostle, I'm like, wait a
Eh,
minute.
eh,
I
Yeah.
go
So,
from a kid to a congregation. Wait, God,
yeah.
I didn't sign up for this.
So then now you have to kind of shepherd and kind of
Yes.
yes, that is a different story, but that's great. That's great that your son, you found this husband of yours that was going to be this provider and be this representation of not just your husband or a man, but a man of God that's going to be able to serve, right? And I think we use this specific language in my house, right? And every time it's time for dinner, I was like, all right, who's let's start serving, right? Because or if daddy's in the kitchen preparing the meal, it's like, daddy, what you doing? You see daddy's serving. I use that language,
Good.
but they know and understand that that's
Mm,
kind of how we function and operate, and that's kind of how
absolutely.
we I need to lead, right? So
That's it. Absolutely.
yeah, no,
Lead
for
by
sure, for sure.
example. Because
Hmm.
they see you do it, they're going to know that it's normal. Our kids will mimic us even when we don't want them to.
They will. No, no, for sure. They're not gonna listen to what you say now, but they are gonna mimic you.
Right. They'll miss the instructions, pick up your clothes, but
Yeah,
they're going to watch
exactly.
how you do everything else and do
Ex-
exactly what you do.
exactly. That's exactly what's gonna happen. So, so you gave us the meat and potatoes of your story. So then, how did you become an author? When did that start happening for you? When did you get that itch?
I was always a writer again because I stuttered so horribly as a child and even as a teenager and young adult. writing was my way of escape. Writing was how I communicated. Writing was just my outlet. So all the good things, all the bad things, all the things I didn't understand, I would write. And, people would always tell you, oh, you're going to be an author. I see you writing books. And I'm like, yeah, but you're just saying that because I can't talk. So, okay, whatever. But it wasn't until I became an adult, and it might have been a couple years into marriage when, of course, in a service, woman of God, I see you with books all around you. I'm like, okay.
Mm,
But still that resistance. I hear you. I've heard it before, but nah, that's not me, because at this age in my life, and I don't know why I thought an author had to be a specific age, but I
correct.
just assumed it's too late for me.
Hmm.
And it was just that nudge to the point where I would write things. And then my son, by this time, he was a teenager. Well, mommy, remember when I was a little boy, you would always talk about writing this or writing that. And I'd be like, I never told you that. Oh, you were eavesdropping? Okay. So you're going to
Hmm.
remind me of my words. And
Yeah.
he has that same gift. And people would ask him, well, you're such a great writer. Where'd you get it from? My mom. And it
Hmm.
shocked me because I didn't know he was paying attention to that aspect of me.
Yeah.
But there was a clarion call on Facebook about 10 years ago for, calling women who are in ministry or who are married to ministers. And I'm thinking,
Hmm.
okay, you know what, Lord, maybe I'll be a part of an anthology just to get my feet wet. So I don't have to
Yeah.
write the whole book. Let me just write a
You just
chapter.
tried the chapter. Yeah.
And from there, it just exploded. Did that. The book was successful. The book actually is called Beauty in the Pulpit. And it was very phenomenal. It was very transparent, very real and raw. But from there, people would ask me to come and speak, to come and minister, to get on their, at the time, it wasn't called podcast. They just wanted to go live,
Yeah.
but,
Exactly.
to join them and just
Yeah.
talk about it. And then that opened up more things for me. But then I felt that nudge from God saying, hey, you've got some things in you that I need you to deposit into the earth, put them in a book. So I started writing books, but I started writing books for other people. I became
Mm.
a ghostwriter
Oh, you
for
became a
other people.
ghostwriter.
Yes, yes. So
Oh,
I've been a
wow.
ghostwriter for, oh my goodness, this is my 10th year actually. 10 years I've
Uh-huh.
been ghostwriting. And it was one of those things, in between jobs, married now in ministry, husband was ill. I got to get some more money. I need another stream of income. And someone
Hmm.
introduced me to a freelancing platform where they would hire any and everybody. So I was like, okay, well, let's see if I can get some gigs writing on this. And that opened up another door. And then I started writing speeches. Then I started writing poems, writing
Oh, wow.
songs. And it just opened up to where I said, hey, wait a minute. Okay, I could really do this for myself. Let me cut out the middleman. Let me
Hmm.
start my
Amen.
business. And that's how my business, Walk Upright, began, because I was somewhere else and just started writing. And from there, people would say, you are so good at what you do. Do you have a book? And I'd be like, no. Why not? I'm like, I don't know, because I'm busy writing y'all books, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Hmm.
So here we are, all these years later. I've been a part of 7 anthologies, and I've written 6 books and have created 4 devotionals and 3 journals. And 9 of those collectively have become Amazon bestsellers.
Oh, man, that's beautiful. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been
Yeah.
busy and still got more to do.
So, of course, of course, of course. I still have to write my first one. I am working on my for Father's Day. My wife got me Your Father's Story, and I get to kind of
Oh,
write,
yes.
different stories and different
Mhm.
aspects of, how I grew up and stuff like that. My kids are starting to ask me more and more,
Mhm.
about my story, but because they're so young, I could only give them, bits
Right.
and pieces, because
They're
what
not ready
happens
for the
is,
whole thing.
no, no. I'll give you an example, right? I'll give you an example, right? So I told my son, growing up, daddy didn't live in a safe place, and then
Mhm.
there was a shooting every night, right? So
Mhm.
then he took that, he processed that, all of them
Mhm.
process it, and be like,
Mhm.
so then they came up to me, he's like, well, daddy, why was there a shooting every night? I was like,
Wow.
oh, there was some activity in there, and then
Mm.
next thing you know, you hear that they went to school saying that
My daddy was shooting
it's
every night,
oh my god, you just like
changing the
it's like
narrative
I
and
can't, I
everything.
can't even. because these things are true, but I can't even really
Gotta be
share this
careful,
in
right?
a way. Exactly.
My
So
goodness.
you gotta be careful. I'm like, all right. I'm like, I have to make sure that I always give the PG version because you don't
Yeah,
know what's gonna come out on the
right.
other side, right?
Absolutely. Next
You know,
thing you know, it's show and tell, and they're telling all your business the wrong
they
way.
they are telling all your business. They are telling. It's funny.
Oh my goodness.
So that's fantastic. You know, you really found your lane. Do you feel like your struggles from the beginning uh help your current business or movement right now?
Definitely. It helps in a sense because when the moment that you recognize or get a glimpse of who you are, everything changes.
Hmm.
And now I know that an element of me not knowing and not having that poor, not understanding purpose was because the enemy was already intimidated by who I was and who I was becoming.
Going to be, yeah. Hmm.
And we don't talk about that. We don't teach children that. We don't really go into that, but we need to, not so much to scare them so that they think, oh no, there's somebody who wants to get rid of me, but to
Hmm.
let them know you are powerful and you are going to change the world in some dynamic. But there are forces that don't want to see that happen.
Correct.
And just, looking back, it's like, wow, you know what? So now here I am in this light to where ministry, marketplace, in the media, showing up. But these are all the things that I would have never imagined doing. But why? Because no one told me that I could.
Correct. Correct.
No
Correct.
one made me feel like it was possible. No one made me see that I could come out of those areas and arenas that I was in at the time. So to see where I am now, and the crazy thing is where I'm going, the half
Correct.
hasn't even been told, but it's like, wow, I never would have thought that the little girl who stuttered, who was from the
Hmm.
country,
Yeah.
could now be in a place where she's interviewing people on a red carpet at an event, or she's speaking before, CEOs and corporate big wigs. Like, I never know me, somebody like me. No,
Yeah.
that's not possible. But
Hmm.
now I'm like, oh, yes, it is. And then I can show other little girls. So when I see young ladies, teenagers, young women, I can identify the old me in them. I'm like, nope, come on,
Correct.
baby. Let me pull you
Hmm.
on out of that. And let me show you what's possible because
Yeah.
you are worth more and more is waiting for you.
For sure. No, I completely agree with that. It's the same. Yeah, same. I could completely relate with that. So for me, when we get what's called the CRR, which is pretty much the description of why, or the elements that brought kids into care,
Mhm.
I'm able to look at it and literally put myself in their shoes and
Mhm.
then figure out. I know what the recipe is love. The recipe is love, comfort, consistency, a lot of things that I was missing. It was, um yeah, discipline, all of those things, all of that come together, and having a sound family system.
Mhm.
Right,
That's
that's the recipe,
yeah.
so that's the recipe we provide for, the kids that come into care. We have my son now, baby Taco. Oh my goodness, if you met this kid, he is so happy, he is so
Oh,
lovable, right?
oh,
We poured and poured and poured. He is just
yes.
bursting. And everybody that meets him is like, "Is this how he is all the time?" I'm like, yeah, that's him. He has that spirit in him. I'm
Wow.
telling
Oh,
you right now, he does.
but that's
So
beautiful.
just I'll just ask you just to pray over his situation.
Absolutely.
There's no resolution yet, so just pray for that,
Gotcha.
because we're coming up to it close. So
Okay.
so is there specific attributes that you think that entrepreneurs should have?
Wow. Specific attributes. Number one, you have to have a made up mind. You have to. You have to get so down to the nitty gritty that regardless of what happens, regardless of who comes, who goes, when it doesn't make sense, when it does make sense, make up your mind. This is what I'm called to do, and this is what I'm going to do. So that's the first thing. Another thing is to ensure that while you have that made up mind, don't try to run your business or provide a service through a wounded place. a lot of times people will do a business just to prove that they can do it, or they'll,
Hmm.
create a service, create a product just to prove the doubters wrong. But when you focus so much on the naysayers, you will always be in competition with your now. No. What is your assignment? Get back to that place. God, what am I supposed to be doing? And if it's something that you're passionate about, if it's a world problem, a psychological problem, an educational problem, if it's an
Hmm.
issue that grieves you, that is probably your telltale sign that you are called to that. It's just a matter of understanding how you're called to it. But have
Yeah.
that made up mind. Don't do it out of trying to prove a point. And then always be a learner, always be willing to learn. You can never get to a place to where you think you know it all, because if so, you're not going to be any good to anybody.
No, I completely agree. One of the biggest switches for me is committing to being a lifelong learner.
That's it.
So I'm constantly, from a kid that never read his first book until I got to college, right? To now hundreds of books,
Yes, being an avid reader.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. Just consuming those things. Those things are
Yes.
so
Yeah.
good.
Because you know the
Um,
value of it now. So it's
mhm.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. It is. So, one of the things that we like to ask everyone
Mhm.
is, we do a lessons learned, right? And lessons learned is very important. After each
Mhm.
transaction, we do a lessons learned. We figure out what worked, what didn't work, what
Mhm.
would we do better in the future.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
what would you say is your best lessons learned from life and in business?
Ooh, the best lessons learned from life and business. I think it's one and the same for me. And I've
Hmm.
never shared this with anybody, but is to learn how to move quickly. I think sometimes we stall, we get complacent, we fear, we weigh all the pros and cons, and we'll talk ourselves out of doing something. But when you know that you have to go, when you know you have to apologize, when you know you have to forgive, when you know you have to make a decision, when you know you need to finish that product, that project, whatever it is, don't allow yourself to sit in a place of, oh, I'll finish it later. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Because what if that opportunity doesn't come?
Correct.
And we don't value time the way that we should. Granted, no man knows the day nor the hour. Granted, we have a long laundry list of things we want to do, but
Correct.
even in all of that, you have to live every day as though, you know what, I need to finish this now because I don't know what could happen in the next moment. And that's not a fear tactic. That
No.
is a I got to make sure I die empty tactic. So
Hmm.
I can't let work be undone. So move quickly. And that's not to say to be hasty in your decision making, but
Hmm.
once you are concrete and you know what you need to know,
Yeah.
okay, execute, come up with a plan, do what's necessary to build up that forward movement. Because if you sit still too long, anything that sits still for too long becomes stale.
Correct. 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 I couldn't agree more. And I have to just throw this nugget out here because, I did have an experience where I died, and then did have an experience where I had several life changing, car accident, rollover accident, category 5 hurricane, almost drowned, been hit by a car, just a lot of stuff that for me tells me we don't have no time to waste.
No,
I can't turn that off. We don't have the time that we think we got, and we
right.
can't operate on guaranteed time.
Can't.
So, when I get to shoot a podcast,
Mhm.
I have to say this because I know in the back of my head I cannot turn this clock off. That's telling me, hey, listen, you could be gone right now. Each and every day.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to make sure that I added for that. So, any last words? Where could we find your books? Where could we find you, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, absolutely. So if you go to www.ebonytheprovoker.com, you'll find all the things. You'll find links to get books. You'll find out how to connect with me, how to book me, how to sit down and have a conversation with me. It is all there. Ebonytheprovoker.com.
All right, perfect. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you
Absolutely.
again for joining us with the Pro Design Builder. It's not just about building a business, it's about building a vision and a life by design. Have a good day.